9/11. Homicides, carjacking, and retail crime are all very high. Criminals are pushing people in front of the subways, looting entire trains filled with packages, and stealing so much from stores that the stores can't afford to stay open. Now, I've already come to this Senate floor many times to describe the horrors of increased attacks on police and the surge in murders. These tragedies cry out for action. These are the results of campaigns to defund the police. Our streets are lawless because blue cities have pulled the police back. The consequences of depolicing extend far beyond that defund the police rhetoric inspires. They extend beyond criminals emboldened to commit crimes like murder and armed carjackings. We've all seen the images of a California train yard littered with open boxes as far as the eye can see. Train robberies are up by 160% in Los Angeles County, and that's just over the past year. The governor of California compared the scenes to a third world country. And I've seen them, and I agree with the governor of California. Organized retail crime is out of control. Criminals rely on the lack of active policing to commit large-scale theft. According to the National Retail Federation, 69% of the retailers say that they've had an increase in theft in the last year, and 78% say more law enforcement would help stop the crimes of retail theft. Why would people not expect more from law enforcement? Everybody knows that government's established for the public safety, among other reasons, but that's foremost. It still isn't a secret what liberal cities need to do to keep crime out of their cities, out of their railways, out of their subways, out of their streets, and out of their stores. Send police where the crime happens. Tell the police to arrest criminals. Prosecute those criminals. Do not release dangerous criminals out on bail. It is a very simple and effective way to reduce the amount of crime. You know what won't work? Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle think that the solution is gun control. But here's the issue. Gun control won't stop a criminal from pushing an innocent victim in front of a subway, let alone keep a criminal from obtaining an illegal gun. The real problem is enforcement by the police. The crime spike began in June 2020, when blue cities nationwide pulled the police off their streets. Progressive prosecutors at that time stopped prosecuting, and these blue cities started bail reform policies that released violent criminals into the street. No police on the streets, but a lot of criminals on the streets. It's no surprise that crime has risen. The problems are depolicing, political prosecution, progressive prosecution, and ineffective bail policies. Blue city mayors depoliced until some realized That was a bad, bad decision to make. This liberal attitude towards criminality may now, slight light at the end of the tunnel, seems to be changing for the better. Just 2 or 3 examples. New York City's new mayor, Eric Adams, announced that he would revive a plainclothes anti-crime unit to combat the violence, and he's also suggesting better bail policies. A couple months ago, we heard San Francisco Mayor London Breed declare a state of emergency over crime in her city. And then maybe a month ago, we saw Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot ask for federal resources to fight crime. The nation's crime spike is the result of less law enforcement. Criminals are feeling bold, very bold, because they know they will go uncaught, and if uncaught, unpunished. Far-left mayors need to use a simple solution with a very proven record of success. They need to bring police back to our streets and keep the criminals off of our streets. On another matter, Madam President, or Mr. President, I want to talk about high drug prices. 3 years ago, I began a bipartisan effort to lower prescription drug costs. And that isn't just a Chuck Grassley issue, that's a bipartisan issue. Following first Finance Committee hearings that I chaired, bipartisan negotiations, and a bill markup, I introduced with the senior senator from Oregon a bill that we call Grassley-Wyden, but I don't care if it's called Wyden-Grassley, but the point is the Prescription Drug Pricing Reduction Act will go a long ways to stop the massive increase we have in drug prices. We passed this bill out of the Finance Committee on a bipartisan vote of 19-9. I have never stopped working to advance bipartisan, negotiated, and balanced drug pricing bill. Drug prices are rising. More Americans are having a harder time paying these high costs for prescription drugs. AARP says brand name drugs that seniors use are going up more than twice the rate of inflation. New data from another source, the National Health Review survey, estimates 3 5/10 million seniors had difficulty affording their medication. I hear stories about rising drug costs all the time at my 99 county meetings, and we have a Q&A at every one of those meetings so people can bring up any subject they want to bring up. They set the agenda, and always prescription drug pricing is on that agenda because the people probably asking the questions, what are we going to do about prescription drug pricings, are probably the very same ones that are being hit by these high prices, and they notice the big increase in prices from year to year. As an example, Iowans tell me about the rising cost of their insulin, or how they worry about paying for out-of-pocket costs in the donut hole. No matter how you look at it, drug costs are going up and Americans are paying more. For 12 months, President Biden and the Democrat majority has focused on a partisan, reckless tax and spending spree, and they have not made any progress in passing drug pricing reform as part of their partisan proposal. I compliment them for trying to do something about drug pricing, but it hasn't happened yet. And the way you get things done in the United States Senate is by doing it in a bipartisan way. By every public account, the talks in the other party on their agenda have stalled. In fact, as best evidence of this, just this very day, the senior senator from West Virginia said that the Democrat bill is this is his word, dead. So, instead of spending more time on bills that do not have votes, we could pass a bipartisan legislation to lower drug costs this very day. It would have a meaningful impact on lowering prescription drug costs. Let's not wait another minute. So the Grassley-Wyden bill, or the Wyden-Grassley bill, remains our best chance to lower prescription drug costs in a bipartisan manner. And I urge my colleagues to work with me to pass this bill. And I'll give you just some examples, probably only a half a dozen out of 27 major pieces it has in it. Number one, it caps out-of-pocket costs at $3,100. Now, I'll have to give it to the Democrat proposal. They have reduced that down to $2,000. I'm willing to negotiate $3,100 or $2,000. Secondly, it eliminates the donut hole. Third, it caps rising drug prices in Medicare at inflation price index. 4, the bill ends uncapped taxpayer-funded subsidies for big pharma. 5, it brings more sunshine, more competition, and more oversight to how big pharma prices drugs in the first place. Lastly, out of 2,700 sections in this bill, I want to say it saves $72 billion for seniors and $95 billion for taxpayers. In addition to this bill, I have 4 prescription drug bills that have passed Judiciary Committee with unanimous support. So obviously all 4 of those are bipartisan bills. These 4 bills bring more competition, let more affordable drugs come to the market, and end anti-competitive behavior by big pharma. I urge my colleagues to work with me to pass bipartisan drug pricing reform today. I will end by saying that maybe early in the new administration, I had a telephone conversation with President Biden on the subject of drugs. He sent his legislative staff up here to meet with me on the subject, and I pointed out what they were trying to do. As I just pointed out to my colleagues today, they wanted to do it a different way. It doesn't seem to be getting traction. So I said to the president's staff, and I said to the president himself, you might want to take a look at this bipartisan bill, probably move it. The other thing is, on another subject, but just a short statement, I had a chance within the last 3 hours to meet with another senator with the President of the United States down the White House on another subject, but at the end of that meeting, I complimented the President on his executive order, I think of last June, in which he mandated to all agencies of government, do everything you can to make sure there's competition working in our free marketplace. And at that point, he suggested a bipartisan bill that I have dealing with meat packing and beef slaughter. And so I told him today maybe we can work on that piece of legislation as well in a bipartisan way. So I could point out 3 issues that I have moving with Democrats that could be brought up now. I'll bet every one of the 99 senators in here have bipartisan bills that they could be working on. And we ought to start that process going if we're going to have success for the year 2020. I yield the floor.